Let's go ahead and do the roll call. I haven't gotten an answer yet, but we can start. We've got enough things to do that we can do. So please do the roll call.
Mr. Diaz,
Yes, present.
Mr. Allegretti,
Present.
Mr. Wilson,
Present.
Thank you. So that makes, if I remember correctly, sometimes when you're on YouTube, you don't necessarily see everybody. So we have in the room, aside from the technical support of UPTV, then we have Tony, we have Carla Boyd, Carol Mitten, Colin Wilson, Dave Wesner. And we have two other attendees in the room. We've gone back to virtual at the mayor's request for the building. So it just means we're going back to a familiar format for some of us, but it does take some readjustment. So if we'll have patience with each other and notify each other when we're on mute or whatever else, we can do a good job of this yet. So I'm going to project the official agenda. There's a couple of little changes to be made, but I am right here. Our agenda for today is the typical. We'll go after approval of the agenda, we'll public participation. Then our HRO, Carla, will give a report. We'll have some different items that have been pending for a while. And then we'll have one new item of the new business, and then we'll come back to 7, which is how we usually conclude of the board before we have public participation again. The 7F is, we know, has a problem with it, so we'll deal with it when we get there, just because the dates have changed since we put this out on Monday. So it looks like we have 3 of 5, which would give us enough to run our meeting. Mr. Rice called in, he couldn't come, and Ms. Kendall is not yet checked in to make sure she's going to be here, but we have enough to carry out business. And so, does anyone have any more changes, Tony or Colin?
Nope.
All right. So let's go ahead and, to make it official, need a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. You have to say it, Colin.
I'll second.
Thank you. Let's vote.
Mr. Diaz,
Yes.
Mr. Allegretti,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. So moving with the agenda, let's hear from the public first. As we do on these, we normally would like them to have the public. Let me see. It's confusing here. If you'll raise your hand, and so we can just sequence you. So we have 1, 2. Oh, there you go. So Katrina is now showing up as an attendee. Let's take care of that technical reason, and then we'll put C back on. She just moved down, and looks like she might have been promoted, or she's logging in again. There she is. So she's now part of the panelists. So we'll have C speak first. Open up your mic. Thank you.
Hi, Ricardo. This is Christopher Hansen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Christopher Hansen.
Well, I'm speaking at another CPRB meeting, just like I have been for years now. Little unclear to even myself why I show up and speak, because even when members of the public show up and speak and point out particular problems with the CPRB, and even when the CPRB chair and members of the CPRB recognize and agree with those problems, it's not like any of them actually get addressed, right? I mean, take the tiniest, littlest, pettiest thing. the fact that, someone with a conviction history can't serve on the CPRB. This is something that, our human rights laws specifically forbid, yet we have it in our ordinance. And this board has been talking about getting rid of that for over a year now. And you'd spoken about it at like most of your recent meetings over the past 6 months even. And you just got crapped on. I mean, by the FOP. I mean, I don't get the impression that you were even asked about this, and I emailed all of you, and no one, Ricardo wrote me back a 1-sentence reply, but no one else wrote me back, and no one else, I don't know if you even tried to contact City Council, but they just passed a new FOP contract, which reinforces this felony history prohibition, which this just makes a joke of the CPRB, right? Because what are you guys ever going to get done if when you just get the tiniest thing through your own hands and then the police department just takes a dump on it? I don't know. You're talking about outreach to the public tonight. I mean, the public have told you what's wrong with the CPRB. I don't think there's an issue of education on your part here. You're not lacking, input from the public about what needs to be improved or changed. It's that nothing actually can be improved or changed. And I've never seen much enthusiasm from this board for all the different members who have been in it over the past few years of actually doing anything. Again, I still can't understand why none of you would, and maybe you'll correct me, none of you would tell the council, no, we don't want you to vote for this. We don't want this prohibition in our ordinance. I showed up to the meeting and spoke against it, but I didn't hear from any of you. Tony Allegretti, it'd be nice if you write back to emails. I've tried to email you several times. I know you emailed me. Your email must not be working because you've emailed me back, but when I've tried to ask you anything, you don't write back to me. So, and if you just don't want to communicate with me, just tell me, and that's fine. I mean, that's the normal state of this board, is not communicating well with the public. I mean, this board has almost never responded to emails, and Ricardo is a bit of an exception, but I usually don't get, a real answer to my inquiries. I just get I hear you, which is fine, but what's the point if nothing actually happened? I assume I heard Dave Wesner's on the call. I assume he's here to lie to you guys in some way and give you some legal jargon for why the FOP contract had to be passed the way it was. I just assume he's lying. That's what the legal department always does. I remember when you guys had Ben Gert on, Carol Mitten brought him in. He's kind of a police propagandist to pitch a bunch of garbage. And he just lied to the city council the other week when they were voting on this, made up some things about qualified occupational exemptions. And it was just ridiculous nonsense that he was telling the council. The council didn't seem to be educated on how the FOP contract arbitration process works. Nothing. I mean, so basically now you're stuck for another couple of years because they passed an FOP contract that ties your hands in many ways. So, oh well. But yeah, just keep pushing that outreach to the public. See what that gets you. I don't know what that's going to mean when nothing can ever change and no one acts on problems. So if you don't realize it yet, your board exists to give the public the impression that there's oversight. The problem is there's no actual oversight. It's just a joke. And it's like a double game of pretend, because you're there to pretend that there's oversight, but the public knows that you're pretending. And that's why no one wants to actually come to you with their complaints. So, I don't know, maybe you'll find some enthusiasm, or maybe you'll sit there for a few months and resign like most other board members do. I don't know. So, enjoy your time. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Always appreciate your comments. Again, going back to handling the tech on this, right now it's not giving the options of everybody in the room. And Alan Max Axelrod has his hand up. Go ahead.
Good evening to the Urbana CPRB. This is Alan Max Axelrod. I know the city staff knows me quite well. And what I'm going to say is that normally when I speak to a body, I have taken years of notes on that body prior to showing up. This is an exception. So what I want to say is I want to thank Ricardo for speaking up against SROs at the Urbana School Board in the fall of 2019. And I wonder why it is that, and maybe I haven't recognized folks, why I haven't seen you all advocate in a similar way. And again, you all have busy lives. I can wonder, without it being a slight, I just would hope that it is due to being pressed for time and busy, and that would be understandable. So in my capacity as co-chair of the Democratic Socialists of America, I'm here to inform you that we will be, in a month or 2 months' time, assigning a liaison to show up to these meetings and to contribute notes, which we will then insert in our community booklets and walk the community. We currently already distribute hundreds of booklets with information about community resources, as well as calls to action. And I would hope that with this body, we can refer to it as a resource and not something to focus on a call to action. I also want to note that to expand on the comment from Christopher Hansen when it comes to Gert's misleading when it comes to arbitration, on Monday I had read out to the Urbana City Council a paragraph of the Illinois State Statute 5 ILCS 315. In there, it enumerated things that were exempt from arbitration. And so the city council that was more or less intimidated into avoiding arbitration may well have surrendered the CPRB singularly because there's a specific exemption pertaining to items around the use of force. So when something is exempt from the special interest arbitration, that means that when an impasse has been had between the city council and the bargaining team for the Fraternal Order of Police, it doesn't go to that same sort of arbitration process. It may mean that there's a renegotiation of terms. It may mean that unfair labor practices are filed. It can mean a myriad of things. The important thing is for you all to understand that because no one had read that paragraph to the city council, now I naively assumed that Gert was good at his job and in good faith. One of those is not true. Because no one read that paragraph, you all are in a very difficult position for the next 3 years. What I believe you all can advocate for is to make sure that the city council, who has now been informed about, again, the state statutes pertaining to arbitration, is composed, is part of the bargaining team for the next contract. See, the thing is that in 3 years when the contract negotiations begin, there is no guarantee that those city council persons will be the same city council persons who vote on that contract. They will again be caught off guard, blind, and feel new to that contract if the city council persons change. The people elected now deserve to start the bargaining process with the Fraternal Order of Police. So in your advocacy capacity, because again, I'm unfamiliar with this body and cannot provide very nuanced critiques on how you operate just yet, I would say, please advocate for the city council members to be on the bargaining team in 3 years. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much for your comments, contributions. I'm going back to this sheets, attendees in the room. No one else has their hand up, so I'm going to move on to the other things that we have before us. But we take notes and we try to incorporate as we go, because it is true, we want to be sitting further. So let us go on to number 4, HRO's report. Carla, your turn.
Good evening, everybody. As far as formal complaints go, there were no new formal complaints, and there were no informal complaints such as phone calls or emails. For the appeals, there were a total of 51 appeals that needed to be addressed. 14 of those appeals have already been addressed, and so there are an additional 37 to be scheduled. I'm in the process of finding available dates to schedule those hearings. The October date is no longer available. It's not an option due to current member availability. So we'll have to get new dates, and I will send out a poll to find out which dates will work with you guys and also with the hearing officer. As far as meetings and activities for this time period, following up from last meeting, I reached out to the UPD for ride-along opportunities for the board. We'll need dates of availability from the board, so we can coordinate that with the UPD so that we can get them on the calendar for them. Mr. Allegretti asked about the process to present to the council. The CPRB needs to bring a proposed ordinance change to the committee of the whole for consideration. And the next dates for that meeting will be October 4 and October 18. There weren't any November dates on the calendar, but as soon as they're on there, I will make sure to share those with you. I've been in communication with Mr. Wilson to help secure space for the Market on the Square for outreach / I believe recruitment. And volunteers are still needed for the CU Pride Fest. If you are available currently and have time, let me know and I will forward your name to the contact person. It is this Saturday, September 25th from noon to 6 in downtown Urbana. And this is just another opportunity to recruit. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Carla, is there a form to submit to the board or the council, I mean, regarding that's kind of what I'm looking for.
I don't believe there's a form, but I can ask Carol if she would like to interject.
There isn't a form. Typically, if you wanted to craft something yourself in terms of formalizing, like you want to amend an ordinance, and so you would do a strikeout version with, and then show added language and underline, or you could bring something in general like Katrina did just about a year ago and talked about changing the provision for, first person account. And that was more of a general comment. And then there was some conversation to see if council was interested in pursuing that. And if they are, then they can task, they can request that staff develop a draft resolution or ordinance for them to consider. So there's different ways to approach it, but there is no form.
Okay. And then that's directed to you, Carla?
I'm sorry?
Then we send that to you to get on.
You can send that to me, or you could present it yourself at the meeting.
Okay.
How do we go about doing that without having to go through public input, so to speak? How do we get on their agenda?
If you want to be on the agenda, you can contact me. You can contact Carla, and if you want to just do a presentation, that can be scheduled, or you can do public input. You have more time if you do a presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
We might have some later on, Carla, as we go through the agenda as we discuss.
Okay.
Sounds good. Good. Now we're going to go into the section 5 in several points. So I'm going to say that 5A is taken care of, as she reported. We have appeals pending, and we'll come back to that topic under 7, but we have had 37 appeals still need to be heard, and there hasn't been any new ones added this month either. So we'll just keep on going through appeals. But I'm gonna then go to 5B. Tony, this is one we've had discussion about, and I realized that by putting out it on the agenda, we'll be talking about the buckets. So I'm gonna just briefly frame before you address 5B. About a year ago, I don't remember when I was asked to be chair, but about a year ago, I was already involved enough to know that there was lots of issues of changes that needed to be made. And so the first order was that changes that need to be made within the present ordinance. Second, changes that need to be made to the ordinance. And then the third one, which that we recommend, though that's number 2, but number 3 is even higher order in that is, are there things that need to be discussed to recommend a different format for the board? So we got to, that one is not one we got to educate it on, but we didn't get to getting comments on. So you're in essence addressing bucket 1, which is changes that can be made within the ordinance, and can we codify them enough to deal with them? So time is yours, Tony.
Thanks, Ricardo. So this is really kind of just a jumping off point. I think everyone here has a copy or at some point has seen the policy and procedure manual. If not, that can be circulated, but I've reviewed it just personally and gone through it and just, marked it up and made comments about the different policies within the CPRB that we can, revise or add to. The date on this manual is from 2012, so it's definitely due for a once over and discussion about. I'm not going to go into great detail about the different issues in the policy and procedure manual, but I think it's something that the board should look at, and either I was trying to think of what the best way to do this would be. I don't think it's something that one person should just go through and make changes or suggested changes and then have the board vote on it. I think maybe it might be the best thing to do, maybe to just have a committee of 2. That way, we're not violating Open Meetings Act when, those 2 individuals are meeting and discussing, what changes should be made to the procedures. But, there's a lot of questions I had just reading through it as to what, how the meetings are, or how the hearings are conducted, how, mostly how the hearings are conducted and how voting is conducted, and just some other things that I think will help streamline hearings that we have. Mostly is kind of what I was focused on, but again, I think it's due for a refresh and to have us look it over and add to it. I think there are some missing pieces as well. So there's just a number of, I think, spots where we can fill in and define more what happens when, for one reason, for one, just to point out, like there's conduct at the hearing when, sorry, let me pull this up here really quick.
I can project it if you want, and you just tell me where to go because I have it pulled up myself.
Oh, okay. So, there's, if we go under, 4.55,
that's 4.55, that's page 6.
Under, 5D, let's say, the board shall conduct the hearing, respecting the rights of all participants, in applicable federal, state, and local law. There's, that's very broad. And I think, we that's just kind of an example of what we should probably define more of. When, board members shall participate and submit a question to the chair. We're operating a little more informally, I think, than this is listing out. But again, I think this would kind of be a difficult conversation to have in an open meeting like this without having some sort of proposed draft that we can kind of all go over. But so I was suggesting that maybe there'd be a committee of 2 to kind of hammer out, proposed changes and discussions, and maybe, from what I read through, it seemed like, there were some areas that were going to be a little heavier to deal with, a lot more needed to be looked at, and some less so. So, maybe we can take this a section at a time at a meeting, and work through it that way. Because ultimately it looks like this current set was approved by the board back in 2012. So, we have a lot of latitude to work, in what we want to see our policies and procedures be that line up with the current ordinance, and I think will address, some of the issues that were brought to our attention with the letter that was put to us by the group, the public group that sent it to us. So that's kind of all I wanted to discuss and bring open. And, I think the next step would be to figure out who wants to work on this. I'm more than willing to work on it. I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to just kind of write something up myself and then, put it to the board without someone else at least checking my math, so to speak.
So as I recall, you started doing the math a while ago. I mean, you were starting on commenting on this document.
Right, I did. I mean, a lot of it was kind of just questions. How are we doing this? How is this being conducted? And I think I'm in a better position now to kind of possibly answer some of those questions, but just in light of it being something that there's going to be, hopefully 7 members of us at some point soon, having one person write the policies and procedures, seems like we should have at least 2.
So you're suggesting that we establish a committee to revise this document?
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Unless someone else has another idea as to how to. I don't know how. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know how it was drafted back in 2012, because I know the board has been around before that. So,
yeah, it's true. I mean, back when we were there, there was a lot of work that was done. But I think that in a way we're more efficient now that we have more experience both in carrying out these meetings, and that this group has been gelling. Colin is new, but he's certainly jumped out all in. So your suggestion to establish a committee of 2 is what we would have for right now. We could always augment it later, but I think that there are enough changes, practices that we have incorporated or clarified as we've gone along that we might as well codify them, because this is, as long as there is no change to the ordinance, this document was already drafted within the ordinance. So whatever we can come up with and keep it consistent with whatever limits there are out there, we should, because there have been plenty of times in which there wasn't direct instruction, and we were assuring each other that as we took a step forward, we weren't going to, step into the mud. So please, let's do that. So open for discussion. Katrina, Colin.
I've been listening. Is there someone on the committee already with Tony?
No, it's me.
Okay.
So far, it's been Tony.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have a problem being on the committee as well to look over that. I don't have a problem. So I wouldn't mind working with you to go over those things, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Okay.
Do you have a copy of the manual? If not, I can send you what I've marked up, and then if you want to look.
Why don't you send me what you have? I'm sure I have one somewhere. I'm doing a little fall things here in my house, so it's probably in a box. So if you could just send it.
I'll
then-
email it. I'll email it
Okay.
to you.
All right.
Good. So I guess you guys have been through enough now that you probably have some recommendations that stand out right off. So if I can ask you then at the next meeting to give us whatever you've gotten to. Recently, I've been just very motivated to close off projects that have been on my table for quite a long time. So for me, this is one of them. We may not be able to change the ordinance. We may not have control over many things, but I think this one we do. And so we ought to go ahead and just put it down on paper of what we'd like to change and then move on and operate under that. So we're good. I don't think we need a vote for that. Establishing a committee is something that 2 volunteers from the board already did. So we're good. All right, everybody? No one's saying no? Okay, let's go to 5C column. This is your, you took up this one and have been moving quite along. So go ahead and update us on outreach and recruitment.
Yeah, so Carla Boyd spoke on this already. I've run into a bit of a dead end. I'm trying to get through to some the city staff members with 3 questions right now. We need how we get funding, how we're going to get tables, chairs, tents, and weights. We need quite a bit of just physical objects to do this. And I want to say the city will have equipment somewhere in inventory or another group we can borrow from, but I'm just not familiar yet. So that's question number 2. And question number 3 is how we can get, I think it's just signage and then promotional materials that will be ready to hand out at this farmers market. And I think it was Tony Allegretti's suggestion that we do the farmers market. And I think that was a great idea. So yeah, we'd love to get more applicants to get on this board. We've got vacancies and we'd like to fill them. And then just to have a conversation with people about what we're about and then just get public input that way. So I'm not sure where to take the next steps. I guess, Carl, I'll be reaching out to you sometime soon to try and get your opinion of where to go next, because I'm kind of running into dead ends where I'm not getting answers from people. So, and I'm sure the answer is just easy, just I don't know what it is. So I'll be reaching out to you for what we got to do next, because the last dates for the farmers market are October. So we've got 4 weeks in October that we can work with. And I'd love to hit maybe 2 of those Saturdays. I think is a pretty reasonable target. So yeah, the sooner we can sort of get some of these questions figured out, the better. And if necessary, we can just, if it's prudent, we can reserve the dates and pay for it ourselves. And then if that can be reimbursed or sent through the CPRB budget later, we can do that too, just in the interest of expediting it. But I guess that's where I'm at right now. So yeah, that's all I got for right now. Thank you.
Is it okay if I comment?
Please.
We are waiting to see if we can get the fees waived. We're just waiting for an answer for that. That's on our agenda. And also, if you have something put together, or if you want to work with me to help get something to put together, we can get it printed.
Yeah, as far as materials, signage, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And we
Yeah,
can work with Bridget for marketing to see if she can help us. We can ask her.
Okay. Yeah. Send me an email or I'll contact you. Let's meet and get something put together. And then as far as the physical logistics, tents and chairs and tables.
We can find that out. I believe we have something, but we can get confirmation on that.
Okay, great. That's good to hear.
So I believe Colin also you found the poster that we had that's pretty adequate, but if we make it big, that's part of our signage there, because my experience at the market is that a lot of people walk by Some will even move slow to read what you've got, but few will stop unless you can engage them in some way. So having stuff we can hand out, and as they go by that they can read, you can inform a lot of people that way. These are the best days for the market. I would say start as soon as possible, and I'll sign up. This Saturday I got flexibility. The next one I don't. Anyway, but I'll sign up for a few. It's these are the best days because you can have a lot of people go by, and they're not all Urbana people, but it's all good, good outreach. So thank you for doing that. So now going up to I am not muted. So as we go through that outreach, we 5D is the 5-year report. Colum and I have gone over it. I didn't send it to the rest of the members of the board yet, but we went through essentially 14 to 19. Scotty had produced quite a bit of this information. We're cross-checking the numbers, and then as far as format, we've got a version to send to you as soon as we finish that cross-checking. And then my hope is that we'll take your comments, that is from the rest of the board, and then finalize it by next meeting. This one, of course, got stalled through the summer, mostly due to me not being as available. But now that we started working on it, it's not that far from actual finishing. That will leave us with the 2020 report to finish. We've gotten a hold of several. Let me see if I can pull them up for your screen. I know I have several. Screen. Anyway, we have found several copies of what the. Nope, I can navigate how you want, but once you got the tech in front of also talking, slows me. But we've seen several of the reports from the last few, from the ones that were reported and made. It's not that hard. Most of the information is the data that makes then the charts to be produced. There are some other things that are written that again, not controversial. The report is, but for me, the important part of this is to continue ramping up our dialogue with City Council. The ordinance calls for an annual report, which wasn't done for a long time. We'll be able to finish and turn in a 5-year report. And Carla and I have started talking as to doing the same with the 2020 report, get them to council. And I think that also opens up avenues for discussion of other things that are listed on there. So I don't want to dwell more on it unless anybody has questions. But for me, this one is another one that will be closed at the next meeting, should everything go as planned. So any questions, comments? Okay. As far as I understand, reports of this type, they'll be made available to the public. Right now, they're being drafted, and because they've got to pass hands 1 to 1 to 2, it takes a little bit of time, but we'll finally be able to close that out. So that's 5D. On 5E, this one is an item that's been on the table for a long time. We considered this TASER report early last year, but there was an item pending on it, which we saw a few months later. But I think we're finally ready to consider the full thing. So, Tony, you want to lead us through this one?
Sure. So the reports and the video have all been on the CPRB portal through the city for some time now. As Ricardo had said, this was initially considered. However, the only video that was available at the time was the video from the actual taser device itself. It was like a 10 to 15 second video with audio, but it didn't provide a lot of evidence or information as to the surrounding circumstances as to why it was deployed. The reports and the video, I think, are the video from the one squad dash cam are pretty much the most helpful, I think, as far as determining the use of the taser in this incident. So, you know, I don't know if we have someone from the police department that is going to provide comments on this first. You know, if we just want to do a you know, discussion of what occurred or what we have in the file, and then
I would like to say something.
Go ahead, Carol.
So we don't have a representative of the police here tonight, but I before you go much further on this topic, I do want to take a moment to refer everybody back to the ordinance, because it's relevant to this discussion. It's relevant to the vote you took in April. And so let's see how successfully I will share my screen here. I've
got the ordinance.
Oh, God bless you.
So
Okay,
just pull
great.
Because
Go to, if you would,
trying to find my share button.
if you could go to 19-43.
Okay. Right now, the faces are blocking my access to share screen.
Okay.
There it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, 19-43 is entitled Limitations on CPRB's Review of Taser Displays. So what this says is the CPRB shall review the police department's taser displays in the manner provided in this Division 4 and shall have the authority to make recommendations concerning amendments to the police department policies and practices concerning taser displays. Now, this is the very relevant part. The CPRB shall have no authority under this Division 4 to review the conduct of any individual police officer or any individual taser display or recommend any disciplinary action regarding an individual police officer. So the vote that you took in on April 28th of this year was a vote that the motion was taser usage was not appropriate per policy 304 304.5.1 or -5.1. It was a reference to a specific police policy, which is explicitly not within your authority to do. So if your intent this evening is to revisit such a vote, I wanted you to be clear, especially since we have new members, that that is not within your authority. If, however, you wanted to discuss that case and whether or not you wanted to make any recommendations about the policy itself, that would be appropriate. However, the vote that you took in April was outside of your authority. And I wanted everybody to understand that before you proceed.
I'm confused as to what 43 says, because if we're supposed to make advisements or if we're supposed to give opinions as to the departmental policy, but in the abstract and not be able to comment on the uses of the taser in individual cases, that section doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Well, it's part of this. Perhaps you could benefit from a little bit of history, and I'm not going to pretend to be the best versed in all the history, but I have. If Scotty were here, he would probably have the most. But perhaps Ricardo has a recollection of some of this. But when there was a desire to have tasers in Urbana, there was a lot of, I think, concern about how they would be used and whether the policy was going to be adequate to prevent any kind of, what do I want to say, undesirable uses of the taser. And so and this is also how the side letter got into the FOP contract, which was there was a desire to have some kind of oversight over the taser, the taser program. And so this is what was crafted, and what was crafted is, okay, we'll take feedback from the CPRB as it relates to the policy itself, but they explicitly said, and you're not an investigatory body, so as you try to probe an issue about whether or not an individual officer complied with the policy, you're putting yourself in an investigative posture, which is not what was intended for the CPRB. So I think that's how you get to this point. And whether you agree with 1943 or not, it's pretty explicit about where your authorities are.
So let me add, because it was Scotty, Rich Searles, who's now deputy chief, and then myself, that we sat through and tried to figure out how to work out a fair usage policy, and then how it would come back to CPRB. There are some parts, 43 is the start of that. Then there's an investigation I was looking forward to, since I'm still sharing, as to how those displays would show up. You have to remember that back then there were no cameras, and the tasers provided a camera along with the audio. And aside from squad cars, in these situations, that was the camera. So one of the early decisions was, anytime a taser gets unholstered, the camera is on. And that's how we end up with a lot of, and the second one was, the taser display would not, they would not point the taser to threaten. They would point it when they were ready to pull the trigger, because it was a need for the taser. So many times in our earlier reviews, all we saw was the floor while the audio was being captured. But that's important in that, as you see, not in 45, but when you go to 46, the review procedure, 1946 gives quite a bit of detail as to what was in there and how to go about seeing it. Shall consider the information contained. So I'm now reading it, 1946A. Will commence this review of the taser display incident report and other information as provided by the department. Shall consider the information contained and other information in the aggregate on completion of the review. So we watch it, was the intention. The CPRB may recommend amendments concerning the police department's policies and practices concerning the taser displays and provide reasons there. And the reasons that therefore is extra there. But and it was always intended, well, in fact, we name it somewhere that we would do them in batches so that we could concentrate on policies. That is, each individual display had its own context that may or may not fit. But it is true, Tony, that when you start watching the incidents, the usage, that's what you rely on to make general recommendations. They're not in the abstract. They are right in front of us because we just saw a display happen. It is also true that while we weren't granted authority to change or to even recommend a particular officer's discipline for usage, it is true that they were going to be exhibited here. They weren't, in fact, somewhere in here also, it reminds us that we cannot call that officer before us. Therefore, I think, Carol, your things is not investigated in that sense. But there is a representative of the police here to walk us through that review and to answer the questions related to that video in front of us. So yes, as to the extent of authority, but the review is a review. We're watching it and then saying what we think so that some of it may make it to policy or policy changes so we don't repeat mistakes. So can I say that both of you are right?
No.
I don't see how we do this in a meeting in the open if these things aren't discussed. And you know, we don't have to vote necessarily, you know, voting that whether the officer's actions were, you know, within policy or not. But that doesn't mean the police don't get to show up when we call them to be heard on this, on a review of this, especially when there's new evidence that's been provided that is not necessarily corroborative of what the police reports are. In my reading of the police reports and compared to what the video shows, I think there are some discrepancies there. So, you know, this board is allowed to review these things. And while our recommendations may be to the aggregate policy, that doesn't mean we're not allowed to discuss what we have seen in these within the evidence. And, you know, I think if this is an attempt to not do that in front of the public in this board, then that is against the spirit of this ordinance.
The fact that
So why, I guess, Carol, let me ask one more question.
Sure.
Why did the member of the police department think it was okay to not appear when we put this on the agenda?
I don't know. I was told that somebody was not available. That's all I can tell you.
Because we've requested this a month ago, which is
I understand that.
So I mean, that is really you know, without explanation that we're now being told that someone wasn't available. I find that is, you know, to be disingenuous at best. You know, every other time we've had this up, we've had somebody here. So I don't see, I find that reasoning to be, you know, again, disingenuous. So, you know, if the attempt here is to not have this discussed, you know, I would strongly object to that. So, you know.
It's not an attempt to not have it be discussed.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to ensure. I was not involved in the scheduling, and I don't frankly know how there was a disconnect, but there was. I think if your goal is to discuss the policy implications and so on. I think that's perfectly fair game. What I don't think is fair game is taking another vote like you took in April. That's clearly outside of your authority. And I will ensure that at the next meeting, if you want to take this up again in the bounds of your authority, I will make sure that there is someone from the police department in attendance.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that the previous vote that was taken I believe you said it was April. So what you're saying is that vote was outside of the bounds of the CRB to begin with? Am I understanding that right?
Yes, the vote that was taken was that the taser usage was not appropriate per police department policy. And that's clearly not within the authority as we read from 1943, which is limitations on CPRB's review of taser displays, because that was taking an individual officer and deciding whether or not they had deployed the taser or displayed the taser within policy. That is clearly not authorized by 1943.
And sorry if this question has been asked. So was CPRB informed in these 5 months? Because if we took the vote back in April and we've had a meeting every month since then, is today the first day that we were informed that back in April, your vote didn't count? Like, were we told in May? I was looking over my notes. I don't think we were told in May. So then we weren't told in June, and then we weren't told in July, and then we weren't told in August. And now at the end of September, now you're saying, oh, by the way, 5 whole months ago, when you guys made that vote, you shouldn't have made the vote.
It was my response. It was my responsibility at the time. I should have called it out at the time. I'm not as familiar with the taser part of your ordinance as I should have been, and I should have thrown a flag on it when you took the vote in the first place, and I did not.
Well, I mean, looking at the taser reviews that we've reviewed for this entire year, and we've only had, that's been the only one that's been pending, really. You know, we can wait for the officer, if they'd be kind enough to show up at the next meeting to discuss what happened here. And then I think we can go ahead and vote on what we think the policy changes should be based on what we're seeing here.
That would be perfectly legitimate.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, just because we have so many other things, what I'm hearing is that we will do a review of the taser, because now we have all the information in one place. At the next meeting, there will be a police, there will be representation by the police at that. No, it used to be that Rich walked us through the information of the review. And then at the end, however limited, with full understanding that the case itself and the officer itself is not, we're not to address that. The policy, it says on 45 policy.
It's under 46 that we can make policy recommendations.
Yeah, policy recommendations, but I think it's even, yeah, on 46, review, here it is, on C. If the CPRB makes a recommendation concerning changes in policies, procedures, protocols, or practices, as the case may be, in taser displays by the police department, it shall provide reasons for each such recommendation. And, you know, the exhibits will speak at least to some of that. So policies, procedures, protocols, and practices is where we, as a CPRB, can act. So next time we will have a review. We will have, so I urge every member of the board to do your own private viewing, so that as we do it in public, it can go through and you have your questions prepared. And so we can go right through that review of the taser as outlined by the ordinance.
And
Okay.
the policy is 304 for anyone who doesn't have that. That's the taser policy of the the Urbana Police Department, which is available on the city website. Hey, Carol, is that Sergeant or Lieutenant Coker? Isn't he our designated?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we had the slippage is because between Rich and Corey, we hadn't quite landed on who was actually on tap. So, but I expect that it will be Corey Coker at the next meeting.
Okay.
If he's available.
And if he's not, someone else will fill in?
I'll make sure someone will fill in.
Okay.
Is it possible that, since we're asking for this a month in advance, it's, if Lieutenant Coker is not available, or Sergeant, sorry, if I'm using the wrong act, if we could know as soon as possible that somebody else is coming and not him?
Yeah, I'll do my best to let you know.
Okay.
All right. So if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to move on. This is obviously an item that's been pending with us, but now we have an agreement of what's to happen for full consideration. Okay.
If possible, I could add just one more small thing.
Please.
It seems like going off what Tony said, 19-44 says that the police department shall investigate. Further down, it says they will provide the report to us along with such information as the police department deems necessary and appropriate for understanding the reason or need for the taser display, the HRO. It seems to me, maybe in this case, that didn't quite happen. I think we got footage, but it wasn't quite enough. So it seems like we didn't follow this policy in that it says they need to, the police need to provide that understanding about why the taser was needed in that case. It seems like maybe we just weren't quite given what was necessary. So I'm not sure where what our authority is, and maybe it's limited, but it seems like policy wasn't followed there. And so maybe that's what we're discussing.
The issue is whether or not we can vote up or down as to whether an individual incident was within the policy of Urbana Police Department. So we're removed in what we normally do in an appeal that doesn't involve a taser. We can't do the same thing. We can make we can give a recommendation as to policy changes per incidents that we see. I don't think there's anything wrong with us doing that.
Okay.
And actually, yes, Colin, there was some material missing, and I think that's, we've been working hard to get and make sure that we have everything in the portal for both preview, but also for a full accounting of everything. And at the time, some of this material was not in the portal for our viewing, and now it is. And in fact, we have insisted that just becomes, that is the practice, and that when we go to the portal to do a review or an appeal hearing, all the material that is relevant is in the portal. And I think that'll come back in a little bit, but we've spelled it out. Okay. So going back into the agenda, as you see, we're now at 6. And this is something that is, there's too much of this, but for me, in 6A, the vote on a week ago at City Council left me in the middle, like cutting out the voice in the middle. At our last meeting, we had a splendid discussion as this subject came back again, that at the time we had sent a request to City Council about striking the exclusion of a new member of the board to not have a felony. It was a year ago that it went to them, and they basically asked to have it be included in other proposed changes. City Council has changed for the most part since then. So our intention was to prepare that language, which is rather simple in that, as was mentioned earlier, it is a striking of a section of the ordinance. And therefore, let me bring it up. An earlier part of the ordinance. No,
You're looking for 19-22C, I believe.
thank you very much. 22C.
When you're done, Ricardo, if you would give me a chance to tell you exactly what happened, I would be
Okay.
happy to do that.
Okay, yes, I'm just contextualizing for now. So as you can tell here in 1922, qualifications for membership of this board, you should have a reputation for fairness, integrity, and sense of public service. No city employee shall be appointed. And no one with law enforcement, current or past. And C, no person with a criminal, felony conviction or plea shall be eligible to serve on the CPRB. And then the mayor will look for balance and diversity. So our proposal last year, but especially as of a month ago, was to recommend to council to strike the C portion of 19-22. And Tony, as we were talking about it, just for me, as you get to addressing that, Carol, is if we are to be watching all of city council meetings, so we know what they're doing, I have to say then they should be watching ours so they know what we're doing, because right now it is one hand going one way and the other hand going the other way. So other members of the board on this, and then we'll turn the time over to Carol.
Yeah, Carol, I would be curious if you can address this as to when that side letter was added. It looks like it was the original execution date is from 2011. So, you know, I'm not sure when that was inserted into the contract. So Can
I give you a little bit of history here? I think it would be useful. Is that all right, Ricardo?
It looks like they're just reinserting what was already included in the previous contract and had been since 2011. To echo what Ricardo is saying is that, yes, I mean, we presented to the board about this. Now, granted, it was not the same council. We presented to them about this very issue. So, you know, it's just surprising that something dealing with our board, the name of the board is in the side letter, and we have had no contact with them. And it's not been facilitated either, is a bit shocking.
Okay. So Carol, before it's your turn, I want to make sure that all the board put their questions before you, so that then as you deal with them, it's all in one flow.
Well, no one's asking, just to be fair, no one's asking questions. People are making statements that involve assumptions that I would say are not correct. So I'll wait my turn, but I think perhaps if you let me go before there's additional comments, it might be useful. But I'll wait if you want me to wait.
I think the board should, let's get the board's input and then we'll get an explanation.
Okay. So your turn, Colum or Katrina?
I'd like to hear what Carol has to say. It sounds like she can tell us a lot more about this history, and I think I could use that history for sure. So I'll happy to wait.
And I'll wait too, because once she has, I might have some questions after that. So I would like to hear what Carol has to say as well.
And I'd be more than happy to answer your questions after I want to give a little bit of history first. And that history is, it's what I was talking about earlier. The side letter, Tony, you're right. The side letter they keep bringing the side letter forward, you know, and just changing the dates on it. But it goes back to when the CPRB ordinance was passed. And there was, you know, as one could imagine, there's, you know, give and take and back and forth. And so there was a compromise that was struck that is captured. I'm sure there were multiple compromises, but there's a compromise that was struck in 19-22 about qualifications for membership. And that compromise is, on the one hand, certain people didn't want people with felony convictions on the board. And then the other piece of the compromise was, well, then we're not going to have anybody with a law enforcement background. So those two things go together. And when folks on this board, who are supposed to be creating an impartial environment, advocate for the removal of one of those pieces of the compromise without the other, that erodes trust that this board is impartial. So that's important to know, that those things go together. They were intended to balance each other out. So now we'll fast forward to the negotiation, and it is a negotiation when we come up with a contract. You're assuming that the negotiating team did not know what your preferences were, and that's not true, because I ensured that they did know what your preferences were. In fact, I think I probably shared the petition from the citizens that were, when they had asked for a variety of changes to the ordinance. So they knew what your preferences were. And I would say that there was a compromise that was struck that actually addressed what Katrina came to the council with almost a year ago exactly, which was the issue of you all took as at the time, the most important issue was you wanted to be able to have a video witness. And so Katrina brought that to the council. The council asked a bunch of questions, and then it came back, and there was no progress made on answering those questions. But the change that was made, the language that was struck from the side letter that has now been struck from your ordinance, is complaints against an officer must be signed and sworn by a person with personal knowledge of the incident, and language will be included in the CPRB ordinance that false complaints shall be subject to prosecution. So 3 things have changed, actually 4. You don't have to sign you don't have to sign the complaint. You don't have to swear the complaint. You don't have to be a first person witness. And if you file a false complaint, we will not seek to prosecute you. So, and the additional things that you wanted, they knew what they were, but it was a negotiation. So it got what had been brought to council a year ago. Now you can be a video witness. You could be a hearsay witness. You could say, my friend told me that they had an interaction with the police and it went down like this. And the person who is actually involved doesn't have to be, and it doesn't have to, there's no actual, there's no evidence. There's no statement that has to be made. It can just be a complete hearsay statement, and a complaint can be filed. So you actually got more than you had been asking for. So I just don't want you to think that the negotiating team didn't know what you were interested in. They did, but it was a compromise.
Thank you, Carol. It is true. That's been one of the many items on the list. Any other reactions or questions for Carol? Okay, so I want to add a couple of things, Carol, because I do want to validate that fact of first account is one that was high on our list, and it was essentially in bucket 2. Changes requests to the ordinance. And we knew that it would take a while to percolate up, and then as it comes back down. So that's the number 1. Number 2 has to do with the language and the balance of these of the felony and law enforcement members of the board. A year ago, our discussion ended up at recommending for the provision of, well, C to be eliminated, not B. But we decided at the time, and I have my notes on it, that the original parties, and I listened to your language, what were intended, at the time, it was very much a balance between 2 groups that were duking it out to even form a CPRB. And I understand that much. But it was a year ago that we concluded in open discussion that those parties may or may not be before us or may not exist in the community, and that we were voicing the opinion of the board at the time, that is in 2020. So that to me is established because that's where we were, and my notes are validate that. The thing that comes to the point, and I'm contradicting myself from 2 meetings ago, I have carefully avoided not to weigh in too much at City Council because many of those discussions end up to be not only the 3 to 10 hour discussion, they end up convoluting a lot of good points and political points, and depending on where you're on the spectrum is where you end up. So for me, I want to go there when we have a clean recommendation as a board. As a person, we are each entitled to whatever. In this particular case, I was asked very specifically by not just members of the public, but by organizations to weigh in on the contract provisions. And for me, off the meetings, I gave also my opinion because I was asked to do it, and so I did. I feel on Sunday, before a week ago Sunday, I felt betrayed by seeing it there that it was, I understand that the negotiation was going. I mean, the contract's been over for a year. And there's a pressure for both sides to finish it off. But what I considered unfair is that we get sidelined when there is a particular item. No communication. Even if we don't want the communication to be foilable, because sometimes it's just, let's talk. It came up and it was going to be passed and there was going to be no anything from us. The courtesy from council to us was not there. And frankly, it went beyond that because I know that they have to do close a contract, but it's different when I show up to the wedding and I'm the one getting married. And I didn't know I was going to go get married. And that's what happened in this case for me. So whatever we choose to do, even if it's to be ignored, for me, it is a fair action to do when we are going to be sidelined anyway, that we at least have to put our opinion. Otherwise, why are we here? And if we're here just to hear a very limited set of anything, then it's not it's not an oversight board. It is a I board, AYE. And so for me, that's where it hurt. The eventual negotiation, it's something that's got to be done. And whether it's you as the representative of the city or there's some political actions, I'm very happy to concede when at least we're considered. In this case, a whole board has been contradicted without any other discussion on this particular point. So all the other points aside, because there's many that will yet be put forward, it's just not enough. So that's my opinion. I've asked others to give opinions, but what are we going to do about it is where I'd like to get to.
I'll say these changes seem, the ones that Carol mentioned seem good. I mean, just like the fact that we were disallowing third-party complaints, I think was a bit unfair. And I think they recognized that. I think that's why they changed that. I think there must have been good discussion that took place. And I think we are being advocated for to some extent. I'd love to hear about some of that. I think this is the first I'm hearing that those changes were made, and it sounds like we need to update our ordinance to reflect that, if I'm understanding right. So we need to change our ordinance, among other things. So
your ordinance has been changed to update. We did that at council.
So it strictly has already been changed.
Yes.
So that's
the final vote will take place on Monday, but they're just conforming amendments.
This seems good. I'm happy to see these changes. It just, like Ricardo said, it seems like I feel uninvolved, I suppose. These are good changes. I just feel we could have been maybe communicated with a bit more, but I'm happy to see these. These are good. I just wonder if we could have been involved just a bit more. But I'm new, so I don't know what that would look like. Thank you.
The one change had to be done for per state law, the requiring of sworn affidavit. So I mean, that wasn't us getting our way. That was the state legislature voting to remove that requirement. So,
Understood.
Yeah. So as far as it being advanced as something that we were able to get done, that's not what occurred. That was state law that overrid that requirement. As far as it being a balance, when this board was formed, that may be the case. But to characterize the people on this board as being, it's either cops or people with felony convictions, and we have to somehow balance those two out. It's a civilian police review board. So the idea of having a civilian police review board, with police officers on it doesn't make much sense. And I don't think it engenders any trust in the board if that were to be the case. But for the response to be, well, then we'll remove people with felony convictions carte blanche, and we've discussed this before. It doesn't, the fact of the matter is there are civilians with felony convictions. That doesn't mean, they shouldn't be on this board. Whether or not we remove that and we get a flood of applicants, I don't know if that will happen. But, as Ricardo said, them not even discussing with us, especially, I know there were at least a few alderpersons that were on the board or on the council when we had put this forward, and to not be consulted, does sting a little bit.
So I want to share the agenda because it doesn't, again, intelligent people talk together, figure something out. If you notice on 6A, when we put it out as something on the agenda as the discussion, the urgency for me to do many other things outside of CPRB was motivated by what happened a week ago Monday. But I want to make sure that we at least have a method of communication that enables much better cooperation. And that for me means cooperation means at times we cede and at times another side cedes. But I want to request that other changes happening to the CPRB as a result of this contract is an open discussion. I know that there are changes to happen because of ordinance changes, but implications to the CPRB out of this contract are a discerning scripture because there are so many sections and so many parts. If our ordinance does not reflect those situations that and are spelled out, we will be back here with another miscommunication. So I don't know at this point what other changes are there, because now I'm afraid that other things are in there that I don't know about, or that I don't know whether it's assumed state law or the so-called police Bill of Rights. To me, if it affects how and what we do, it's valid to be put here, and we should spell it out. So I'm open to suggestions, and I don't know, you guys as staff, you have to keep track of a lot of things, but how it affects your boards is one of those considerations. And so somewhere in there's got to be at least a domino effect in which we are one of those dominoes. So let me suggest the formalization then on as to this. I'd like for us to be at every council meeting, and that one person then report back as to anything that happened there that might influence us. We have no control over whether they actually come to us and they're present at our meetings. I've had a couple of the new members say they watch our videos, but in this particular case, I don't believe that they were watching last month's video because they're a courtesy person would have a friend, a colleague would have flagged something as a fait accompli even, but at least as a flag, and it didn't happen. And frankly, I don't want it to happen anymore on any other issue. And if we're going to have good communication, it means frequency for me. So I don't know what you all think about engaging ourselves anymore, but at least at the beginning of each meeting, the CPRB ought to be part of that meeting, even as a public. But it cannot happen again that this kind of miscommunication happens when there were so many warnings.
Could we consider asking the council to appoint somebody who would act as a sort of liaison to us, so that, there'd be, just one person whose responsibility it would be? Because when there are 7, 9 council members, I mean, it's whose job is it to tell us at that point, right?
And it could be that they feel that maybe it's our responsibility to know what's going on. Not saying that it is, because I don't finger point, don't know, not sure. But like Ricardo, I don't want any more miscommunication to occur, because it's like we're in the same house on 2 different levels, and people that are outside of the house are looking in and making their own assumptions, making their own judgments, making their own statements when they haven't walked in the house to see which level is going, haven't been on the top level, haven't been on, but they're making all of these assumptions about, hey, you're doing this or they're not doing that. So in order for that, the people that are on the outside of the house looking in, trying to make their own judgment calls, their own questions, their own assumptions, I think that having a presence at the city council by the CPRB, it will cut down on the lack of miscommunication that we seem to get. Not so, I don't want to say all the time, a lot. It shouldn't happen as much as it's happening, the miscommunication, and then we don't know, or not aware, or only get part of the story.
Yes.
So if we're agreeing on that, can we then call for 2 parts to get on that communication? 1, are we willing to be present at their meetings? And 2, are we suggesting that at least we ask them to have a liaison with our meetings? So it's 1 and 2. Are we agreeing to both? Because the 1, I'm always conscious that we're volunteers. I mean, the council is in a separate position altogether. They're elected and whatever. We're appointed. And are we appointed for 1 hour a week? Are we appointed for 10 hours a month? Yeah, it's a genuine concern for me. I have been in enough groups where volunteers get tired, and it's very easy for volunteers. They just walk away. They don't have to give you an explanation. You're going to cut their pay. There's no way. There is no holding somebody back from walking out if things don't fit. So they don't necessarily voice. Volunteers don't necessarily voice their full feeling orally. They do it physically. So the 1, are we willing to be there more often? It implicates more time. And yes, we're willing to sign up to be at Saturday, but these are Mondays. And if it were designated Monday, then we would take turns. That's the implication of that. How they handle our request to have a liaison is up to them. So I'm just the way my screen's working. I see Colum saying yes. I don't see the other faces, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because I'm sharing. No, I'm no longer sharing a screen. So maybe it was the last speaker.
I think it gets easier for us to get on what Katrina was saying about sort of being more in line with what city is doing. If we had 7 board members in their seats, I think when you have 5 members, there's more work for everybody. If you have 4 or 3 members, there's just too much for those members to do. So I think it should be easier if we reach this board's full number of seats too. Because you're right, it's a lot.
Yeah, if you're rotating 7 people for council meetings, that's, once every 2 months or so. But although, I mean, the other thing is, I guess, you can try and time when you show up at the meetings, or are you locked out? I'm not sure how it works with Zoom. Do they lock you out if you don't log in at the beginning? Oh, okay.
Well, if we had 7 members and it's a once a month assignment for one of us, that's once every 7 months. It's every 6 months. We each would go. So that commitment doesn't add very much to us.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So we are going to talk about showing up at city council soon. So maybe then the request to liaison is also part of that visit. Okay. All right. I want to deal with a second related issue to this, and that is, what do we believe as a statement when it comes to the guts of this issue? We 1 month ago were willing, and since we already voted a year ago, it didn't matter, that we weren't going to put it up to a vote up until today as to what are we proposing to city council when it comes to members of the board with a felony conviction. And while it may be outside of the contract, it may be too late, I think it's still valid to put forward, because it did not seem like city council had thought through this. And the recommendation by a member of the public that they be part of the negotiation, the bargaining team, I haven't thought enough through that, but I think that they should know our opinion. And we didn't get to it fast enough.
I mean, we can still put it forward. We've already voted on it. So, putting it forward and letting the council, explain, and maybe we'll get more explanation as to why it was voted down, or why the letter was inserted or kept the way it was. If it's something as simple as, their own, inexperience with it, as, because they're all relatively new to the council, maybe that's, as long as it's discussed and put on the record, I mean, that may be enough. That's maybe all we can hope for, I guess, at this point. I don't know what the implications would be if they were to change the ordinance, how that impacts the contract. I don't really know.
Well, I would argue, Tony, that it's not for me to know, in that I am not part of that negotiation team. I am not part of the contract except as to its implications. And therefore, putting forth our opinion is for them to consider how they're going to handle it.
Right.
So they're the ones with the procedure and the binding agreement.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it should be put forward, and we'll hear what they have to say about it.
Okay.
But
is anyone disagreeing that we put forward our opinion that section should be struck?
So something that Tony said last meeting stuck with me, because I had suggested that we strike both the disallowing of former police officers, and something that Tony said that stuck with me. He said that we already get the position of the police. We're already getting their side of things very strongly here. And so I think that I've been thinking about that a lot, but since then, so then the last thing I might wonder is, what about former police officers? Because, you said this is a civilian police review board, and I think former police officers, I think they might have sort of an insight that we don't and that felons don't, while also they're not beholden anymore to their teams, to their squads. And I think I wonder if you might consider allowing just former police officers. What do you think about that?
I'm on the fence about that because it's like once a police officer, you're always a police officer. That's how I think. Even though you're retired, you still have your same friends. You still, if you've been there for 20, 30 years, you're going to still think like a police officer, even though you might not have the same privileges and advantage like you do. So it would be good to have their insight, but if they were a jaded police officer or they just were a police officer that just did the job, it was just a job for them, and then their intent, their heart wasn't in it somewhere along the line, however many years they were in that police force, then they would not be effective. And it also depends on how they look at felons, regardless of what it is, what their history is. However, on the plus side, it would be beneficial to get another view from a police officer, something that you don't look at. Like there's two sides to every coin, two sides to every story. Sometimes there's a third side, and it would be nice, but it just depends on, we would have to do, me personally, a lot of research on the history of that policeman while they were in duty. What have they done since they've retired? Prior to me saying, hey, that would be a good person on the board.
Yeah.
Katrina, I'm going to agree with you, and I hope this sounds like an agreement. We're not ultimately responsible for appointing somebody to the board, and that balance is specific to the mayor. But as I think of our own deliberations amongst us five, Colum hasn't, recently joined, but Scotty was very present. I think there were times at which we influenced each other in our discussion, and we swayed each other. But whenever somebody had an idea that was a little bit off or a lot off, that person has been outvoted without too much blood. Maybe pain, ego, whatever. But it has happened more than a few times.
Right.
They each get outvoted. If I had a police officer, an ex-police officer, as another member of the board, and they expressed an opinion very, very forcefully, even amongst five, there's going to be four that say, thank you very much for your opinion. We vote against you. That is, isn't that the purpose of having a good board, that that opinions can be expressed fully, and then we each abide by the fact that the board voted rather than I voted? And so for me, to strike both B and C, that portion of the former police officer part, I think city officials and present police officers are being represented. But I don't have any issue with another opinion being put forward in our deliberation, because if that person does have an agenda, I don't know, maybe I've had an agenda at times and I've been voted down many times. So that's why I would say, if there is a, an intended balance of both, then that for me would definitely be okay, then let's do both. And if you want to argue it still, then you have to argue why yours is better than the others. So anyway, that's my opinion. Shall we put forward a motion and then see if we can agree on vote as to what to do? And I'm okay with either one, either motion, a broader one or a more narrow one, but I think we need to come to a recorded conclusion.
How about we could start with a motion to strike, to put forth language to the city council to strike both C and the former police officer language from B. And I would say if that gets voted down, if the board disagrees with me, then I'm happy to put forth language to the city council for just this, just striking C. So if we voted maybe in that order, would that make sense?
I think I hear a motion from you, Colin.
I think Tony wanted to say something first.
Didn't we already vote to put forward just striking C? I mean, we haven't been able to do that. So I would say we do that first and see what the council does with that. Since we've already done that, we haven't heard from them on that because we've had some issues getting it in front of them. You know, that I mean, if we're gonna do, I don't think we need to vote because we've already voted. And if we're gonna vote again to put a different change to the ordinance, and then we're gonna have two changes in front of council, that, you know, I mean, they could decide that themselves, I guess, but it seems confusing if we put two different proposed changes to the ordinance to them.
It's hard to say, Tony, but let me say this. A year ago, Colin wasn't here. I don't remember who else might not have been here. But the present stance of the board, I think, ought to have a fair vote on the present members of the board. If we come to agree on only one of the sections, I'm okay with, or, you know, striking part of B is fine with me. But I think that now, let's say it's just Colin. If he's going to say yes, then he ought to have an opportunity to vote. A revote in this case, I was looking for the minutes here as to what exactly we voted on. But it is a different council and it is a different board just by removing or adding one, because it does change the actual, did it pass the full board or not? So if you don't mind, we can by vote reject Colin's first proposal, if that's what it turns out to be, and then we can come back to just B and say, let it stand.
Okay.
Okay. So I hear the motion by Colin. So if you want to word it to say strike, let me get the numbers I was writing down.
So I can say it again. I'd like a motion to put forth our stance to city council in our language, saying that we would like to strike 19-22C and part of 19-22B, in that we would strike the restriction for former law enforcement officials from serving on the CPRB.
Thank you. Do I hear a second for that motion? The procedure, I think, makes me a member of the board too, so I would like to second it. And therefore, Katrina, Tony, Colin, we're voting on removing C plus a section of B. Okay. Carla, could you take a quick vote?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Diaz,
Yes.
Mr. Allegretti,
No.
Ms. Kendall,
No.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion doesn't pass. So now we can let stand just the removal of C, unless somebody wants to call another vote.
Yeah, so it sounded like Tony said we don't need to vote on this other one. We've already voted, so we can just put that forward, if I understood right.
Yeah, I mean, I can move that we put it forward in front of the board if we want to do that, but I think we've kind of already accomplished that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So when we visit the board, then that will be part of our recommendation if we need to do the legalese for it, but that's okay too. But I think that that's ultimately their responsibility as long as we declare intention. And it's our intention is rejected, ignored, or whatever else, at least the satisfaction of having it put forward is as we can. If anybody wants to come back with other tactics afterwards, then that's okay, but at least this part will be done, okay? All right, I see, it's for some reason on my screen, when column is the first one that shows up, then he is the one that's getting my reaction because he's the biggest screen on or the biggest face on my screen. Thank you. We'll close then 6A. We want to go back to 7B. This section has always been a little bit more procedural, but I think today it entangles a little bit. And let me, before I ask you guys to give your well, no, let's just go 7A. Does anybody have any other comments or announcements that you want to put forward to us or to the public? I do want to mention one then from my view. I don't see any faces or hands down. There, as you know, I'm very happy to be more involved with you individually, and as we meet one-on-one offsite, I get to learn your points of views and your background. So, in thinking through of our representation, I want to reiterate, I really do have a lot of faith and trust that as you represent your view orally, also while in meetings, it is satisfying to me, and I look forward to it because a fair board ought to be able to speak candidly to each other, and so I'm happy for that. In that vein, I sent you guys an invitation to come to the well, I don't know how to make sure that it shows, but what I'm trying to show is the Champaign County Welcoming Plan. The launch of this was last Wednesday at a beautiful gathering with about 100 people, in which, I mean, there are a lot of groups already supporting the Welcoming Plan, but the intention is to have immigrants be a full part of our communities, and especially in Urbana, as our charge is to give them access to police actions and their own reactions to them. The plan has a section for public safety, and that public safety part does encourage well, I'll just read it. Recommendation 2, page 16, if anybody wants to have it. It's a PDF that's floating around. Recommendation 2 is to equip immigrant communities to participate in personal and public safety measures, short-term strategies, provide know your rights workshops covering individual rights and responsibilities, strategies to successfully interact with first responders, federal agencies, and local law enforcement officials, and information on how to spot and respond to fraudulent calls and scams. Second bullet, expand immigrants' understanding of the importance and process of filing complaints and reporting crimes to law enforcement officials. Increase immigrants' access to file reports and complaints by providing forms in multiple languages and ensuring first responders and law enforcement officials have access to reliable interpretation services. So in two ways, the recommendation is that immigrants get taught about complaints, how to file them. And then on the other side, that complaint forms are available in different languages. I'd like for us to make that part of our agenda too, to fulfill that recommendation, because I think it is within our plans. We have changed our forms recently. One of the members of the board about 1.5 years ago asked very specifically that we put them in different languages. We haven't gotten to it, but I'd like to put that on our work list, especially if we change any procedures and which imply changing forms. I think we ought to be as transparent as possible in every language out there. So I'd like to request that we do that in an upcoming party. Just work, part of the work that we do. That's an observation and a request that I have. We can put it on an agenda or just go ahead with it unless anybody has any comments on that.
No, that sounds good.
All
Carlos,
right. Thank you.
Ricardo.
I know
I keep saying that. I don't know what's wrong.
Yeah, it does sound good.
you got to say Carlos at the end. Tony. Oh, I, what can I say? It's a mistake.
Yeah, it's up there. I don't know what.
They call me Ricky, then I would get it. But Carlos is an okay name. Ricky would not be.
Sorry,
Thanks.
I keep doing
That's all right. So 7B, it's a reminder, we still have 2 vacancies, and as we put out different ways we can bring people in. 7C is the discussion that I had with you guys a little while ago about us being volunteers. In essence, our practice has been to volunteer about 6 hours a month. If we have a 3-hour meeting, regular meeting, and a 3-hour appeal once per month, then it's 6 hours. But as I was visiting with each one of you, there was a discussion there that deals with 6D, 7D, to take up suggestions for dealing with appeals quicker. As Carla mentioned, we still have 37 appeals that were behind a long time. And it would be fair that we look for ways to deal with them faster, more efficiently. So I'm open to suggestions as to how to do that. And we can float ideas to do so. 37 appeals. Some of them take 15 minutes, some of them take an hour. Not that we can determine that beforehand, but it is a long time. Every meeting that we've had, we've dealt with 2, sometimes ambitiously 3. So if that were to be true, we've got 11 months of appeals left. Any thoughts?
I'm not sure how to make them quicker because we want to make sure that we hear, everything in the appeal and then have time for discussion. So I would love to find a way to make them quicker, but right now, being fairly new to the board, I'm new, but I'm old. I don't see that happening just yet.
Is there a way to limit just discussion about it? Maybe keep time like we do with the public participation, and maybe people will be a little more careful and concise in getting their points out. I don't know. Maybe subconsciously it'll make that happen. I don't know.
Public participation.
That would help me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great, Tony. That'd be great.
You're on mute, Ricardo.
Oh, sorry. Public participation has 2 sections of it, and members of the public are already limited to how long they can speak. So I noticed the board was listed at 4 minutes today. We've had as much as 5, but the most anyone can speak when it comes to the public is 10 minutes total if they speak at the beginning and at the end.
No, I mean us during the appeals.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
We could have a timer for each other. I would welcome that too.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Katrina's right that if we tried to move too quickly, we might not give each appeal the kind of attention it deserves. But on the other hand, if we physically cannot get to all these appeals, their relevance to current policy, their relevance to the public diminishes over time as well. So the longer it takes us to get to them, I think we also suffer, and the public suffers too. So there's got to be some kind of balance.
So can I suggest? Oh, go ahead. Okay. So can I suggest something? By ordinance, we are required to meet for regular meetings once a quarter. we switched to monthlies because as we started dealing with more items, we felt like we needed more regular contact. Now we have a working board of 5, and hopefully we'll have a working board of 7, but already in 5s and dealing with individual committees, we're producing more. So if I can suggest, what if we did a once a quarter meeting as required, or maybe once every 2 months instead of every month, and we use the extra hours to do more appeals. And that way, let's say it's 10 months of appeals, we would cut it down to 5 because we would be handling more appeals. Not being conscious with each other of talking less could actually also work, and we could hammer them out. And that way we wouldn't be here towards, even the middle of 22 is for me a much better hope than it is the end of 22.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea. I know, Ricardo, we discussed that, and that seems like that might be feasible. We can always switch it back if we need to.
Okay. All right, would you be amenable to every 2 months or every 3 months? Because every quarter of a year is three months. So once every 3 months or every 2 months. I'm open to either suggestion or motion if you want to move it. So
maybe once every 2 to start, and then we can maybe see what that feels like, and then.
Okay.
I think we'll know if they become bi-monthly meetings, if they stretch long into the evening. That might be a hint to us that
more often but shorter.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, before we take up the motion to formalize it, we would then have our next regular meeting not in October but in November. And then as the appeals are, that's a lot of schedules to match. Yeah, the appeals as fast as possible with looking for twice a month, but even once a month as soon as we can to get those moving faster. Is that okay? All right.
The only thing though is that we wanted to, we had a couple items that wanted to come up the very next meeting, like the report to City Council.
Yeah.
Or if we're okay, I mean, I don't know that we wanted to delay that any longer, but.
Actually, to not spring it on the public either, how about we just say next month's meeting stays in October, and then we'll take November, skip November, and put that meeting in December. And that way we have a fair warning to the public too.
I like
that. That's a better idea.
All right. So can I take a motion to, I'll take a motion to move our meetings, our regular meetings to every 2 months, starting in after October meeting.
I'd second the motion.
So we will have an October meeting and then not one until December?
Correct.
Okay. Just checking.
Sounds good. So I did, in essence, I normally take the motion from the floor, but in this case, Tony took it as my motion, so that's okay. All right.
You need a second? A second.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, Carla.
Mr. Diaz,
Yes.
Ms. Kendall,
Yes.
Mr. Allegretti,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's make it so as far as the scheduling that's coming up. So we did then 7C, D, E, then possible appeal hearing. Are you ready to bounce, Ms. Boyd, dates, or is that floating still depending? Because everyone should know it's one thing to schedule the council room, and it's another to find a night in which there is a Zoom available, this room is available, and other staff as needed are available. And then there's us. So Zoom meetings require a twist as to availabilities. So when it comes to E and F, Ms. Boyd, is there any news?
No, there isn't, because I have to figure, like you said, I have to come up with comparable dates with the room, with you guys, and with the hearing officer. So I need dates from you guys, possible dates, and then I'll send a doodle poll out with those dates on it that who can actually attend. And then after that, we send those over to the hearing officer and see if their schedule can meet with that, with what you guys can do.
Carla, can I ask a question? And I don't know if I can ask it in this setting. I know that I was supposed to be going out of state on the 22nd, and so I said I could not do an appeal, but I can now. And I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but I wanted to let you know.
Okay, I can use that date also. I'll submit that date.
Okay. So that basically settles us then as to turning it over to Carla with the information we provide her, and then we'll announce it. To remind everybody, we'll be having then the meeting in October as scheduled on the, somebody help me, I can't find it on my calendar here. Our October meeting, regular meeting is calendar. An email disappeared. I closed too many windows. Okay, phone. The CPRB meeting.
October 27th.
Yeah, it would have been on the 27th.
Okay. So that's our regular meeting, CPRB. Okay. So we're announcing it with nice long time. Expect an agenda photo like this time 1 week before amongst us, and then we'll pass it on to staff to circulate it to the public. We might even be able to do that a few more days instead of just the Monday before. That then concludes the agenda that we had planned for today. Of the items above the line, we will go back to comments from the public unless any member of the board still has something left pending. That being so, then let's go and listen to the public. Tracy Chong is the first one with her hand raised. And so go ahead, Ms. Chong.
Hi, Ricardo, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tracy Chong. Okay, so I knew that city staff will go quite far to limit the Civilian Police Review Board, you guys, your authority, when it isn't in the Urbana Police Department's best interest. But wow, I almost could not believe what was coming out of City Administrator Carol Mitten's mouth tonight. Tonight's meeting is an extreme case of Carol Mitten meddling and doing everything she can to ensure that UPD officers basically can do what they want. And based on your pushback, I think you kind of see it too. So some history. The Civilian Police Review Board has been taking votes about proper and improper taser usage for the past taser reviews. On July 24th, 2019, the CPRB reviewed 7 cases of taser usages and discharges. This board, CPRB, voted that the taser usage in all these 7 cases was acceptable. On January 22nd, 2020, the board also voted that the taser case they reviewed was acceptable. In a past meeting, there was even discussion based on the procedure written by city staff, where board members were reminded that they are supposed to deliberate based on the evidence presented, and at the end of the deliberation, vote if taser usage was acceptable or not. This was by city staff, the procedure that was written. So what is special about the vote that this board made in April regarding the taser usage, the one that Carol Mitten said was improper? The only difference is that this is the first time that the CPRB has voted an improper taser usage. And why is Carol Mitten so adamant about you guys not voting for the February 6, 2019 taser case? That's because new evidence showed misconduct and you guys saw it, you guys want to discuss it, and Mitten knows that it is very likely that there will be another vote of improper usage. This is just an attempt to squash another public determination and declaration of improper taser usage. To say that Carol Mitten's explanation for Lieutenant Coker not showing up is disingenuous is really putting it lightly. Hopefully, you guys realize that Carol Mitten and UPD just showed you the middle finger. They have been trying to avoid providing evidence for this case since 2020 and have been putting off revisiting the review of this case for more than a year. And Mitten saying that she's not involved in scheduling, so she has no idea what's going on. That's a blatant lie. She knows about this case. So you guys are trying so hard to do outreach, and one of the reasons is to get volunteers. And we've said it before, Mayor Marilyn has been turning down good applicants, and we've been asking you guys to follow up about it. These are good people who have applied and just been denied for no reason that's been made publicly. So you're doing your outreach, maybe try to get a hand of why this is happening too. Finally, I would like to reiterate that when Carol Mitten's, that she was being very deceptive and dishonest by making it seem like you guys have won some of the asks. Because as Mr. Allegretti pointed out, when it comes to the new police contract, it is already new state law that requires that the sworn affidavit requirement be removed. Also, the removal of the CPRB notary requirement, that was done over a year ago. So touting all these as wins, it's so dishonest. Anyway, I hope that you guys realize that the dishonesty and lies from Carol Mitten, she has personally pledged to support this board, but these lies, this dishonesty, she has done it over and over again, using whatever means she can to obscure accountability, especially police accountability. Her actions have eroded all public trust in the CPRB, and if you guys allow this to happen, all your efforts to do outreach and to promote CPRB and gain public trust, it's just a waste of time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Chong. C, please add your comments.
Hello, this is Christopher Hansen again. Well, this meeting was, a perfect example of what I described earlier, where, this board is really just for pretend, and most intelligent people can recognize that pretty readily, which is why the vast majority of anyone doesn't know what you do. And if they knew anything about you, they wouldn't bring, a complaint to you anyways, because they would know it wouldn't go anywhere. I hope when you go home, you'll look up what controlled opposition is, and that's what you are. You're controlled opposition. You're the impression of a counterforce, but you're not actually a counterforce. You're just pretend. I don't know if you'll ever fully learn this, because you probably won't hang around long enough to fully realize it, and you'll be too polite before you do realize it. Carol Mitten is a professional liar. I don't know what she's like in her personal life, but in her professional capacity, the mayor pays her, she gets paid $170,000 a year to essentially be a professional liar and snub progress in any way that would go against the mayor's agenda. So, and you can see that, happen today. And I do hope you guys will be a little bit sharper to point these things out. And I also hope you realize that just some strongly worded sentences here at the CPRB meeting, that doesn't progress anything. It is Mitten's job to receive those strongly worded sentences, crush them, or contort them into something different than what you intended, and then achieve the goals that she wants to achieve. So I don't know, arguing with Mitten is kind of pointless. Go directly to the city council or issue a public letter or something like that. No one's going to see what's happening here. So write a letter to local news organizations saying, what you would like to do with this board and what the city staff are preventing you from doing. I don't know why no one on this board ever does that. And the only thing I can think of is that the mayor selects people who will, not step out and will just conform and be that controlled opposition that she needs you to be. So I guess you guys don't know anything about the FOP contract negotiation process, which, yes, it is a failing on your part as well as on that of city staff. So Richard Searles, who's been your police mentor in this board, he was on the bargaining team. So, and you guys talked about this felony conviction thing with him and in his presence multiple times. The bargaining team, it's kind of a joke actually. There's a bargaining team for the FOP contract, and both sides of the table have Urbana police officers on it. So I mean, the whole thing's just a total joke. The thing that Carol was trying to pitch, that they changed the CPRB ordinance because you guys had suggested it. That's total horseshit. I mean, that's absolute horseshit. The sworn statement, the sworn witness requirement is being removed because Urbana needs to now catch up to what state law requires. And state law doesn't allow you to have that sworn affidavit requirement. So we're just catching up to the bare minimum here, Colin, and I hope you go read this. I emailed it to you. Do not give praise to Carol Mitten or the bargaining team for doing something that the CPRB wanted. That is not what happened here. And when you do that, when you give that kind of praise into a dishonest claim, you're just becoming that controlled opposition that's horseshit to begin with. So I wish you'd do a little bit more homework. Again, you guys will probably just drop off the board because you'll realize that you can't actually get anything done here because, well, I mean, we have a mayor that commits crimes against the public just to get her way, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. And Carol Mitten aided her in doing that. So I don't know. And the fact that you spent the whole meeting, not the whole meeting, but a large portion of the meeting talking about this piddly issue of past felons serving on the board, it just distracts you from the fact that your board doesn't actually have any accountability or oversight, which is the real conversation. So, and that's the whole point, right? To distract you with pointless issues. So this is what we're going to do, and this is what we've been doing.
Thank you. Well, not intentional. Not on my side. Mr. Hanson, your time had run out. Sarah Nixon.
Hello, Civilian Police Review Board. This is Sarah Nixon. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to give some public input. I think first I just want to say that I applaud the members of the CPRB who are showing indignation this evening at maneuvering that is further undermining the CPRB's ability to be functional. I encourage you to continue that stand. I echo Mr. Hanson's suggestion. Write an open letter to the news media. Speak up, speak out. And then with regard to a topic of discussion that you were having about liaison and sort of back and forth interaction or engagement with city council meetings and them with you, I agree that seems to be a real issue of like broken, game of telephone where the left hand is not communicating with the right hand. And I also agree that it's while it's been thoughtless, perhaps on their part, as you've pointed out, it also is the CPRB's, should be the CPRB's obligation to keep their finger on the pulse and find out what's happening, what's on the agendas, and what is happening in discussion and votes during the council meetings. And on that note, you discussed this evening the idea of appointing somebody from your board who would act as a liaison, and whether you might be willing to be present at their meetings and vice versa. I would like to offer myself as a member of the public, as a volunteer, if you are willing to consider this. I could offer to serve as a liaison, certainly at least in terms of flagging for the CPRB any issues that come up at city council meetings that impact the CPRB or that relate to the CPRB's purview. I do attend all city council meetings as a concerned member of the public, and I have over years experience as an observer for the League of Women Voters. As I'm sure you know, or several of the members of the CPRB are aware, I was the observer for the CPRB for a year. I stepped down from that role, that observer role, because my engagement with the CPRB in that capacity ultimately led me to engage more directly during public input, as I am doing now. But I think I could be more useful in service to the CPRB as a liaison point. I know you all invest a lot of time to meetings, appeals, and investigations and so on. So please feel free to consider my offer. In closing, I know I'm down to half a minute. I would just like to state that I agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Kendall's comments about the inappropriateness of considering appointing former police officers to the CPRB. She said it more eloquently and more, much more intelligently than I could. But until you have former felons sitting on the board, you should not be considering former police officers. So thank you for giving me time to speak.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have Grace Wilkin, who will be our last contributor tonight.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Grace Wilkin, and also on the council, speaking as a member of the public and also a perspective of that role. Just wanted to say thank you for serving and volunteering on this commission, and that I've been listening, and I agree with increasing communication between council, CPRB, staff, and the public. I do think that it's regrettable that CPRB wasn't informed of FOP contract and ordinance change updates as it directly relates to CPRB. I definitely support more communication between council and the CPRB, just for my own personal role and perspective. And I'm happy to help participate or facilitate that however I can. So just wanted to say that I'm listening, and I hope that we can continue more discussions in the future. Thank you.
And thank you also for being present with us. I think it's time. Welcome a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
I second.
Seconded. Let's vote. And I wish you all a good night.
Mr. Diaz,
Yes.
Ms. Kendall,
Yes.
Mr. Allegretti,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.